Hello and welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. I'm your host, Ed Charbonneau, and with me today as a guest is John Bristow. How you doing, John?
I'm well, thanks.
So I am reviving the interview portion of the Eat Sleep Code podcast. And I figured why not talk about our good friend and co-host that has been there with us through the pandemic doing news shows while things try to get back to normal. Our good friend John Bristow.
Okay, cheers. Thanks.
All right. So we're gonna talk a little bit about you today, John.
Oh God.
So you've got quite the dev path. You've been with Microsoft in progress, and now you're over at Octopus Deploy.
Yes.
Um, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay. Currently, I'm at Octopus Deploy. I'm a product director there. I look after a team called the integrations team, which is a team that's in charge of building integrations between Octopus Deploy and other applications and/or systems. So what that means is basically when you build a product and you have infrastructure associated with that product, you want that product to talk well with others, and typically you'll do that through things like APIs, etc. But when you're dealing with infrastructure, it's not as easy to have those systems talk to each other sometimes. And so to facilitate that, you build integrations. And those integrations are either within the product itself talking to Octopus or within Octopus talking to those other products. And so we spend a lot of time looking at other parts and pieces of the pipeline that you have in a CI/CD pipeline, and looking to integrate between those pieces and with Octopus to basically facilitate a better experience. So I've been doing
So
that for quite a
yeah.
while. Yeah.
So Octopus Deploy, for those who aren't familiar, this is a product for CI/CD, is automation. What what exactly are you all specializing in?
Yeah, it's always hard to get all the things covered when you're doing the who are you, what do you do? So Octopus Deploy, you can find out more at octopus.com. We are a continuous delivery solution. So if you are looking at automating the way in which you deliver software to systems, to applications, to platforms, etc., like that, and you want to basically have a repeatable and consistent process for doing those operations, whether you're deploying websites or deploying applications or deploying a point of sale system across 3,000 kiosks, for example. Those and other types of scenarios, Octopus Deploy is a solution that allows you to do that. It's an automation solution for deploying software.
And what type of things do you do to help? You said you're working with integrations. Like, what is
Yes.
your daily like activities like? Are you testing things out hands on? Do are you interfacing with customers or big enterprises? What's your daily routine like?
Oh God, it's varied because I'm in product management, so which means you have to basically do a lot of different things at once. So I'll talk to customers who are using our product and ask them, "Are you having a good experience? What could be better? Are you using a certain integration? What could we improve there? Oh, I see you're having a challenge, etc." We'll factor that into the next cycle of development, etc. I do development within the team itself, so I'll experiment with ideas, and I'll say, actually, maybe what if we went in this direction, for example. So yesterday I was cutting Go code, and I was working with GitHub pipeline actions, a pipeline in the actions that we have. So there's that, and then I'll be working on what we call pitch documents, which are like specifications for new features and improvements to a product. We do a lot of communication through chat, and so I'll be on a chat call or a chat conversation with folks talking about features. We'll have Zoom meetings. You name it, there's a lot of stuff to do. It's kind of like spinning a lot of plates. So yeah, there's lots of stuff to do as a product manager. That's not to say there's more than anyone else, but there's a lot of different hats you have to wear, and you have to spend a lot of time kind of sniffing around like a truffle pig looking for the sort of solutions you're looking to the problems you have. And so there's a lot of time you'll spend coding, there's a lot of time you'll spend writing, there's a lot of time you'll spend on chat. There's a lot of time you'll spend, collaborating with customers and with your internal folks, and also partners are another thing. So you'll talk to companies who are partners of yours, etc. So there's lots of stuff to do.
Interesting. I know we've known each other for, I want to say, about 8 years. Um, and we were both in DevRel. I'm not sure
Yep.
what it is exactly you were doing before DevRel, but we did DevRel together for quite some time.
Yeah. Yes.
So, what similarities do you think what you're doing now has with DevRel, what you've done in the past?
That's a great question. So DevRel and product management are somewhat similar. So for folks who are watching this thinking, "Oh, product management sounds good," DevRel is you can see as either a direction leading towards product management or an offshoot of product management. So developer relations, or DevRel as we like to call it, is basically you're out in the community championing a product, the stack, etc., showing developers how to get things done with your product or stack, etc. And generally, you have a very breadth approach, meaning you have a very wide net you're looking to cast and trying to bring in as many developers together and try and get them to utilize your software. Product management isn't too dissimilar. One of the key differences, obviously, is that you're specing out features and you're much more hands-on with the product. So you're uniquely in charge of, in some respects, the direction of the product. That's based on obviously data that you collect and telemetry you have, etc. So, but yeah, in terms of developer relations and product management, they do have similar types of responsibilities in the sense that there's marketing involved. There's a lot of technical aspects to the position as well. I would say that you know having good skills and communication is obviously a plus if you're looking at to pursue one of those careers. You need to be able to effectively communicate with customers and with partners, etc. But in terms of product management, your focus is definitely on delivering features and improving product. Whereas in developer relations, you're more focused on awareness and adoption, I guess I'd say.
Is there anything in particular that you've been working on that's exciting or challenging or anything like that?
Yeah, so we do a lot of we're a bit of a polyglot group in the integrations group that we have inside of Octopus. So we, because of the nature of integrations, you don't get to pick, hey, I'm a C sharp developer and I want to use C sharp, or hey, I'm a Java developer or I'm a Go developer, I want to use those languages. Sometimes you don't get a choice. Sometimes you do. Sometimes those environments allow you to facilitate an environment where you can pick whatever you want and use it. But more often than not in integrations, there's a stack you're wanting to target. So let's say I want to integrate with the new Power platform from Microsoft that they announced at Build, or I want to integrate with SQL Server, or I want to integrate with um, some application server in Java, or I want to integrate with something that's based on Go. And they don't have a facility in which you can extend or integrate with the platform through a language that you would like. You have to roll up your sleeves and learn those languages. So we do a lot of work in different languages. So one of the things that I've been struggling with, or not, I wouldn't say struggling, but one of the things I've been doing a lot of is Go development. So we have a Terraform provider. So providers in Terraform are these little pieces of software that live inside of Terraform. And what they do is Terraform is a product that allows you to configure software with Terraform. So the name is apt basically. So if you think about terraforming a planet, you're changing the environment to suit your needs. The same thing can go for software. So Terraform is a product from HashiCorp, and it's done through configuration. And providers are specific implementations for specific pieces of software to run Terraform against. And so we have a provider for Octopus Deploy that you can run Terraform through, and you can configure an Octopus Deploy instance with HCL, which is it's like a markup language sort of thing. It looks a little bit like JSON. And using that configuration language, you can tell Terraform, I want my Octopus instance to look like this. So the Terraform provider is written in Go, and so we've been working on that. We've been developing that thing for a couple of years now, and so we've got a lot of interesting challenges with that. So that's something I've been quote unquote struggling with,
Mhm.
to use your words. Another thing we're looking at is we have a bunch of GitHub actions. So remember, I was saying we integrate with different pieces of software as part of the CI/CD pipeline. GitHub Actions is probably one of the most popular ways in which customers build software today if they're hosting their code on GitHub. And so GitHub Actions are a means for, performing, and the name is again very apt, actions against your software. So whether that's a build, or I want to inspect the code for security vulnerabilities, or I want to run a linter, or things, anything you want, basically. If you've looked at the marketplace for GitHub Actions, there's a lot. There's about 13,000. We have some, and with those allow you to target Octopus. So you can actually run a build, and then with one of our actions, you can then throw that over to Octopus for the deployment. That being the package you generate off the build. So if I run a build of a C# program, and say I run MS build or nuke or make or something like that, and I generate an exe, I can then pass that exe over to Octopus deploy, and it will go ahead and deploy that depending upon the process I've defined. And so we have actions that enable you to basically pass that package over to Octopus very quickly. And so those are built in TypeScript. And so the ones that we've built, we can build them in other languages if you want. But getting back to this point I made about being polyglot, I have to do the context switch. So it's kind of like, if you're a polyglot, it's kind of like driving a standard car as opposed to automatic. So if for those folks who are old enough, who have
Good
enough gray
analogy.
hair like I do, that can remember what a standard car is like when you're actually manually shifting gears, that's kind of like being a polyglot, right? There's a bit of a delay in terms of like, oh, that's right, I'm doing this in Java, or I'm doing this in whatever, right? So there's a little bit of that, and then automatic is basically I do everything in one language and away I go. So those are some of the things that that context switching is always going to be a challenge for anyone. And just for the folks who are watching this thinking, oh, I'll never experience that, believe me, you will. A context switch is going to be something where some new paradigm comes out, some new platform comes out, or something radically changes in the stack that you target. Like, so let's say, something new in .NET, or something new in Java comes out. You have to learn that. And that's, in a sense, kind of like a context switch. You have to stop. It's like a computer. It's stop, swap everything out. Okay, now go. And so your brain will delay a little bit as you learn it, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, we do this a lot in web development. We've got a million different things going on with, are
Yep.
we in HTML? Are we in CSS? Are we in TypeScript? Are we in
Oh yeah.
JavaScript? And you're batting around all these different languages. And I remember one day just kind of jumping back into like C# code after being in one of those four things that I mentioned, and starting
Yep.
to type out uh, Pascal.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, my brain has just broke. Like, it's
Yes.
gone completely back like 10 years to code that I haven't written professionally ever, and just started defining Pascal code in the middle of this
I know, you're
file.
like, what the hell is a unit? I don't even know what's a unit. I did a little bit of
Uh,
Pascal and stuff back in the day. Yeah, you start
yeah,
asking yourself some strange
yeah.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah, begin and ends instead of
Yep.
curly braces, and you're like, all right, something. I'm going to start writing go-to statements in a minute. I've got to take a break.
That's right. You flip the table and you're like, that's it. I'm going back to assembly.
But it's fun to try these new things out. Are you finding Go
Yeah.
like interesting? Different way to tackle the same problem, that type of thing.
You know what the thing about Go is it lends itself really well to building command line interfaces. And given its nature, so by design, Go is designed to be highly concurrent and it's functional. And so when you're building a command line interface, that tends to be a functional exercise, meaning, all right, let's add this command. All right, let's add this command. And so you're constantly, when you're building a CLI or a command line interface, when you're just constantly adding new functions to the program itself. And so Go is a really good candidate language if you're considering building something around, for a command line interface. We've discovered, or I haven't discovered, but I knew about these things. We're using them. We're using frameworks like Cobra, which is really nice. There's a really nice library for in Go for processing things on the command line. And it's called Cobra. You can find that on
Mhm.
GitHub. And then there's another one called Viper. This is by the same guy. I like the naming, and the icons are clever as well. That allows you to process and render stuff to the screen as well. We're also using a library that we mentioned on Eat Sleep Code called Charm. So Charm is a set of libraries that are written in Go to basically bring the terminal UI or TUIs back in vogue. So we're looking at things like that, and it's just an experiment that I'm playing around with. So Go's really interesting from that perspective. Now, traditionally, Go has been written for backend systems because of this concurrency nature to it, but turns out it's not so bad for front end as well. So yeah, if you're looking at getting to Go, golang.org, I think is the URL, and pretty easy to pick up actually.
Whenever you say Cobra, all I do is have flashbacks to the '80s and GI Joe.
Oh, right, yeah. I thought you
I'm
were going to say
definitely a child of
Corba
the
and
'80s.
the enterprise edition of Java. Sorry, that's where my brain goes. Or GI Joe. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm old enough.
Um, it's funny you mentioned Go and in the whole CLI thing because I imagine writing a CLI tool is very much you're defining a set process. It's not as stateful as something like a user interface where I do a lot of my time in web development. You're constantly like juggling this ball of state around, making sure that
Yes,
it's pretty hard to wrap functional around the web. I know certain languages have tried. There's Elm, and I know React does a decent job at it. But
yeah,
for the most part, you have a stateful thing on your screen, and you're showing data to the user at all times. But I did write a prototype for what is now our Telerik UI for Blazor template conversion tool. So basically, you have a Blazor app, and you want to make a Telerik UI for Blazor app out of it. This thing is going to go in off of the command line, and you target a project, and it's going to run through various steps and say, all right, first of all, let me check, is this even a valid Blazor project? And then it's like, okay, sure, that is. And then it goes to the next step, and it's like, can I add these dependencies that I need to add? And then so on. It
right,
keeps going through these steps. And at any time in that thing, if it fails, what you don't want to do is go in and like write over some configuration in the project and have it in this like state of limbo where it's
right.
half converted from project type A to project type B, and you're stuck with this like mutant that's neither A or B because the process failed in the middle. So I used a functional library for C sharp
Okay,
that lets you do ethers. So it would be it's kind of like Rail programming on Rails. So
hmm
it passes step 1 and 2. If it fails, the whole thing just rolls back. The entire chain fails, and it sounds
right.
like Go is very capable of doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Like Ruby is very much on the dry principle, which is don't repeat yourself. And with a functional based language, you certainly are driven in that direction. State is certainly the canonical hot potato. No one wants to hold it, and everyone needs it. And yeah, it's tough. I get you. That's why we've had this hodgepodge of solutions forever. We've had cookies. Okay, that doesn't work. Let's move it on to the server. No, that doesn't scale. Okay, put it back to the server. Put it back to the client. All right, we got spas. We'll use spas. All right, that's the solution. And then we're moving on. Okay, we need WASMs. All right, what else we got? Like we're just constantly throwing stuff out to try and solve the same problem. In addition to other problems, I'm not saying the whole reason why is because of state, but it is a major, major problem. And these are some of the challenges, by the way, you interact with on a daily basis as a product manager. So for those folks who are watching this thinking about product management, you're constantly thinking about things like this, like not like what about state, but it's more about like what we there's always going to be contention in a system, right? So it's not like you're going to have this perfect jewel of a product and everything's awesome. You're going to have to make trade-offs, and so you're always thinking about like if we do this to fix that, then this is going to be maybe a new problem. And so for those who are thinking that I'm not me, not my code, I will always have pristine code and it will always scale and be awesome. I'm sorry to say I have the gray hair to show for it. You're going to have to make trade-offs. So state is one of those trade-offs, believe it or
Yeah.
not, in the industry by large. We've come to the agreement universally that state is something we all have to live with. That it is a design paradigm, despite the fact that HTTP is itself is kind of stateless. If you think about it, it's request response. Like that's it. That's the dialogue. But we've kind of shoehorned all this state on top of it. Like no, we'll throw cookies. How about transaction IDs, correlations? There we go. Keep going. Sort of thing. So we keep chucking stuff onto the pile. and hoping it will work. And by and large, it does. I mean, the internet is a thing. Last time I checked, we're able to transfer money and able to buy stuff and you know do business, whatever business that may be. So yeah, it works, and but it's hard. It's really hard, and so don't feel bad if you're struggling. I would say as well. That's another thing I like to tell a lot of folks in the industry is that this stuff is hard. You got to keep on top of it, but it's not like everyone knows everything. It's not like there's some grand wizard who knows everything that is perfect, and you're going to attain that level. Like you're always going to be struggling, and you're always going to be learning. I think, and I think that's part of the cool things about our industry is that change is a constant, and you're always learning. So if you like that, this is the industry for you. Believe me.
Yeah, I think that is very much true, and also everything is old. That's old is new again. It seems
That's
to
right.
be a
That was
reoccurring
so
theme.
last week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like we see things like MVC come about, and
Right.
you see a lot of design patterns kind of repeat from you know one age to another. Like functional
I know
programming
MVC's
has
so
gone away.
old. It's
Like
so old, and it's like people are thinking it's the newest thing. I'm like, this thing's been around for a long time.
yeah, functional programming was hot for a while back in the day, and
Yep,
now it's come back. With things like Go and F sharp and a lot of other
sure.
things. And concurrent
Yep,
programming's kind of brought that about. So
yeah, yeah. So it drives you. The reason why these languages are designed, it's not like you can't do concurrent programming in a stateful class oriented language. You totally can. It's just a little bit harder to hold, if you will. If you go functional, obviously that gives you that drives you in that direction of being stateless or being, designing the way in which you build up your application a certain way so that it will lend itself to that. So it's just worth looking into. So
yeah, it's kind of where our processing power is gone these days. Is this whole
sure.
concurrent processing flow.
100%.
So yeah,
Yeah, if for the longest time the CPU has been just sitting there twiddling its thumbs, like, "What do you got for me?" Like, I'm doing nothing here, and everyone. It's like there's a lineup to the GPU, which is like, "I gotta do Bitcoin mining now. What are you talking about?" Sort of thing. And the GPU is like under pressure. It's like this underpaid intern, sort of thing that or not paid intern is just like been told to do everything. Meanwhile, the CPU is this thing that's just sitting there, and he's just looking around looking for work. He's like, why has no one come to my office? I'm like, I'm here. I'm ready to do work. And it's just idling at 1%.
yeah,
Sorry, that is a deep cut. That's a deep cut. I apologize.
I see a lot of things that I used to do a long time ago in the like 3D dev space, like coming back
Right.
because we've got devices now that are, you know, they're capable, but they're capable in the sense that our desktop computers did these things, 15, 20 years ago, but now they're
Yeah,
tiny and they're like strapped to our face. I know that's one of your favorite things.
exactly.
But
Well, dude, everything's running Doom now. You can run Doom on anything, right? So
yeah.
we've made that a meme, basically.
But you see like the need for like low poly gaming and stuff like that coming back because you've got hardware that's tiny, but the capabilities are somewhat overshadowed by like the modern desktop.
Right.
So these old patterns and practices come back into the norm where you're trying to save for every pixel you can and every vertice matters when you're working on something that's like an Oculus Quest. That's
Yeah, the best
Android
way to think
phone on your
sometimes the
face.
best way sometimes the best way to think of our industry is like a forest, and every once in a while, a fire will just go through and burn everything down, and then it will just like, and then everything grows up green again, and then another fire just goes through and burns everything down, and just grows, and so it's constantly burning down and constantly renewing. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's always new patterns coming about, but if you read the historical context or you do the histrionics on it, you'll come to understand that a lot of this stuff has been around since the 70s, if not the 80s, and we're just doing it again and again and again and trying to find new ways to do it. That being said, I mean, like the thing that's always been the limiting factor is the hardware, but that's now getting to the point where okay, we can put stuff on our face and we can put stuff in our ears and we can do interesting things, and that's where the software then starts to shine, because like it's all the software's always been capable, right? Because it's virtual. All it's needed is better hardware. And finally, this, we're starting to get some pretty good hardware. These M1 Max, for example, are fantastic machines. And so, it's now what we're capable of doing with these things is phenomenal. Our imaginations are unlimited. We should be able to do more. That's for sure.
Don't get me started on the M1. I've had a bad day with mine again.
Oh, sorry.
No, I think the hardware is great. I've had a devil of a time with the software end of that spectrum.
Well, yeah,
Uh, growing pains. Let's just say that, like trying
sure.
out the latest. Being on the bleeding edge on top of these things is never fun. Not
Hey,
never
it's
fun. It's always painful. It can be fun and painful, but
yeah, but not as painful as it used to be. I think that's a
yeah,
fair statement.
it was kicking me while I was down this morning. It
Okay.
had I was trying to install the latest Maui bits on top of this
Yeah,
M1, and
did you have to reboot did you have to reinstall your operating system?
I thought I was going to at one moment. Uh, it was that bad. Uh,
Okay. Sorry, I stand
so
corrected.
yeah, I think there's an error with the installer on Visual
All right.
Studio Preview for Mac. That caught me, and then Xcode was throwing fits, and I installed Xcode, but then it turns out you have to actually run Xcode, which then in turn kicks
To
off its
install
own
it.
installer
Right.
to install more things, I guess. So
Perfect.
even though I had it installed, it wasn't completely installed. So it was a whole thing.
Yes.
It took up my entire
Yes.
morning.
Turtles all the way down, as
So
they say.
very little do with the actual M1 chip itself, which seems to be pretty impressive. I've heard some rumors that Mac's going to do the VR headset. So I'm kind of waiting to see
Oh,
where that
cool.
goes.
I'm sure they'll say that they've reimagined it and no one did it properly before us. So
They've got the right hardware for it. They got the right hardware. So we'll have to see what they do software wise.
awesome.
So, what type of hobby, tech stuff have you been up to, John? I know you like Raspberry Pis. You done any
Yeah.
Raspberry Pi baking?
Not lately. I've got one here actually. So this is the Raspberry Pi 4. It's a little dusty. I haven't actually fired it up in a couple of weeks. Yeah, I like doing a little bit of that. I like monitoring various parts and pieces around my house, such as my pool filter. What else am I monitoring? Oh, my garage door opener. That's always a classic. We have a mutual friend, Troy Hunt, who's wired up his house and has no end of grief and frustration using IoT. So you can see a Raspberry Pi as a means to an end to do that. It's obviously not as small as some of these sensors can get. So that's something that I do from time to time. I like to dabble and program various bits and bobs if I can. I don't get a lot of time to do it these days. I do have other hobbies, of course, but yeah, always a challenge to see what else you can automate. And there's never a better feeling in the world than driving up to your house and trying to show your wife, hey, check out what I just did. And you bring up your phone, you hit a button, and nothing happens. That's always a really nice conversation to have with your wife. It's like, what happened? What am I supposed to see? So
That's
yeah,
nice, honey.
Christmas is always an automation time as well. So the lights being synchronized with music, etc. Halloween, these are always classic moments for the dad to come out and roll and like break out of his shell and be like, all right, we're gonna automate something. I don't know what.
One
We're gonna
Griswold
automate
here.
something. Yeah, that's right. It's classic Griswold thinking. It's you know it's like let's not put a light just across the railing. Let's put it across every tile on the roof, and that will look great. So I go to that extreme sometimes.
So, what kind of Raspberry Pi thing are you using on the pool filter? What is that doing?
So it depends on the filter that you have. So if you have an electronic one that has an interface port to it, you can hook into it. And obviously, finding the manuals for some of these things, if they're relics, can be difficult. The internet's pretty good for that, actually. A lot of people will scan manuals and for the broader community and make them available. So you learn the I/O channels, you learn what inputs they accept, etc. So if you get your hand, a really good sign for me as a tinkerer is if you're looking at a piece of hardware, like it's a pool filter or Well, it's not a pool filter per se, but it's part of the shed that is my pool. Like we classically call it the pool filter, but in
Mhm.
reality, there's a chlorinator in there. So what I'm really talking about is the chlorinator that, and also the box that controls when it kicks on. So there's an interface port, a serial port that you can talk to there, and so you just wire it up, and then oh, one doesn't mean off, or like 1001 doesn't mean off. It actually means something else, right? So sending different codes through is always a challenge and always fun. And you hope you don't blow up your hardware in the meantime. But generally, those things are pretty. They just you get odd behavior from time to time if you're messing around with them. The garage door opener is always the one that makes me laugh. Those inevitably always have some kind of input, and just getting them to work right is hard because there's always a delay. Like these things sometimes can be clicks, right? So you'll interface with a garage door opener, and the processor is not that powerful, right? It's going to take time to think about what you told it. And generally speaking, when you press the button, like if you've got a door opener, you press the button. That's a simple command for it to understand. It's like, okay, well, let's get going. Let's lift the door. Um, but if you're telling it to do other things, for example, like if I'm in the proximity based on my geolocation, then open the door, or otherwise do this. It's not like that logic's happening on the garage door, but it's like ultimately you're going to send a code to the garage door, and sometimes it doesn't get received, or it gets lost in the network of devices you have in your home. So it can be frustrating in that regard, and you start throwing these things around, and you get angry, and yeah, some words are said. So as they do. So yeah, automating home is always a fun project if you're looking to get frustrated. There you go.
I think I think I would end up with garage door, button with a solenoid hooked to the Raspberry Pi and just press the button for me.
Sure,
Like
sure,
I would go the like caveman approach and just be like, all right,
sure.
the button has to be pressed. Something remotely presses the button for me, like one of those what are they called? The machines with all the crazy pieces to it.
Rube Goldberg
Yes, yes.
machines.
Why couldn't I remember
Yes,
that? Yeah, that
yes.
would be
So
my
if you,
style.
yeah, it's the classic sort of like this hits that, then it goes to this, etc. So yeah, you've got to make it's got to look good, or it's got to be hidden. That's the other thing, because the partner acceptance factor will be very low if it is a monstrosity.
Yeah, especially mine. So I have a wife that is the polar opposite of me, and if it has anything technical related to it, she wants nothing to do with it. So
Fair enough.
anytime I try to automate something in the house, it goes through the most scrutinizing process, like getting the. I won't speak the name because it will start responding. The smart device behind me. We've got one of those in probably every room now and a couple lights, but that's about as far as I've been able to take it. And
Okay.
the lights are not well received by my wife. She's like she still walks over and is like click the physical
Yeah.
switch. So
Yeah.
she's not a fan.
What are your thoughts on the whole voice command thing? Are you a fan for those devices?
I've yet to find something really just compelling that I can't live without.
Okay. I got into HomeKit a little bit, and the voice commands associated with devices like that shall be not be named, because I have a lot of them in my room. I don't want them freaking out. But the ones that
Mhm.
start with S, or the one that starts with A, or and you say the hey whatever sort of command, people who know will know. Um, I don't know. I always had this sort of opinion, like I don't want to bug my own house, and
Yeah.
I always had that challenge when putting devices like those into my house. I can see the value of it, but I like that connectivity that systems like HomeKit provide, where it can talk to other devices. So I have smart lights in my house, and you can adjust the color and the tone and all
Mhm.
that sort of stuff.
Same.
We like using our app for that. We don't like talking to some device to control those things. Like,
Mhm.
hey, whatever, who we're talking about, dim the lights by 50%. We'd rather just pull up the app. So just so it's not constantly listening to your conversations. That's all. Not like I'm having weird conversations or anything, but it's like I'm not like I have anything to hide. But it's just like it's kind of this creepy feeling like there's something that's always listening in your house.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And I have a friend that works for one of these big companies, and I asked him, just pretty bluntly, like, is this thing literally like listening to everything that we say and processing it. And he's like, no, like, come on. Like, there's so many coincidences that happen
Oh, you're talking
with
about
this
Facebook
thing.
now showing me ads for dog collars when I've never searched for dog collars before, but we're talking about dog collars
Right,
within
that
the
sort of
Wi-Fi
thing.
or yeah.
It's like making pancakes was one of them. It's like
Oh, okay.
I can make pancakes in my sleep. Like I know the recipe. I've never looked up the recipe. It's, it's just something that you know, right?
Right.
You've done it a million times. And I remember my daughter was over. She was visiting. She's like, "Are we gonna have pancakes tomorrow?" And the thing starts showing ads for recipes for pancakes, and I'm like, I never searched for that. I never would search for that. Like, why
Right.
is it showing? How does it know to show me ads for this? Right? Or suggestions for it.
I've I've
Uh,
talked to people about this, and my theory is nuanced, but here it is, generally speaking.
mhm,
There are certain apps that may listen. I'm not saying there aren't. There may be certain apps that listen. I'm not saying anything about any particular apps, by the way, but certain apps may listen. In addition to that, there's a social graph associated with your search history, right?
mhm.
Implicitly, right? So if I'm Joe and my daughter is Alice, Alice may search things like pancake mixture recipes, etc. And just by that connection, because if it knows that my daughter's Alice, it will make that connection and say, "Hey, this person over here is we know is your daughter. Therefore, I'll show pancake recipes to you." So the social graph, I think, is
Yeah,
the thing that people tend to forget that the connections you have in real life actually do provide inputs to those sorts of ads that come through.
yeah. I can see things like that happening, like where they're not really coincidence, even though they feel like it. Um, just
I
because
know it's creepy.
those
It's creepy though.
are
I'll
crazy.
100% agree. It's creepy. So
The one instance that really boggled my mind, and still to this day, I swear these apps just listen all the time, even though my friend says no, they don't. Um, I'm in the car and I have my phone with me. I am not on an app for music, but just on FM radio, right?
okay,
Just, normal FM radio, which is not hooked to any social graph. I didn't search for any music
that
through it.
you that you know of.
So I do is get in the car and this station is on, right? It's not Spotify, it is over the air FM radio.
Okay.
Um, and there's a
Yeah,
very
hello,
specific,
Ed.
yeah,
Is
very
your name
specific
Ed?
song playing.
Yeah.
It was a cover of
Making Pancakes
uh
by Miley Cyrus. I don't know. So
the Sound of Silence covered by Disturbed,
oh, okay.
playing on a rock station. This isn't the
Yes.
most common song,
No.
right?
No, I know
It's
that song.
It's usually, I mean, they will play it from time to time on a rock station. It's not the
Right.
most, like, popular song.
Right.
I come home, I get out of the car, I walk in the house, and on the device, the one that will not be named, on the screen says, "Would you like to listen to Disturb the Sound of Silence?"
Okay.
And I'm like, "Come on."
So chances are, and this is part of the agreements you
Let's hear
sign
it,
up for
John.
when you well, hang on. When you sign up for services, it could be anything. I'm not naming anyone in particular. I'm just saying this is sometimes what happens. When you
Mhm,
sign up for services, websites, apps, etc., and you sign in with a login, there that data could be potentially sold at a later date or shared at a later time, or at the same time you're actually using the app to other
mhm,
companies. And so that is being ingested by other folks behind the scenes, and that's where the creepiness starts to come in. It's like, how does it know? It's like, well, it's not hard. It's like you've assigned an agreement for this site or service they're using, and under the covers it's doing things in the back, but it's not really sharing personal information. It's mostly like, hey, we just hey dude, this guy just heard this song, The Sound of Silence. Maybe you should let him know that he can listen to it at home. You know, the product that shall be named nameless. You know
right.
what I mean? So
So what
yeah.
you're suggesting is third-party app told assistant, manufacturer that, this was a
What else
thing.
could it be? It's
I
either
don't
that.
that's
Okay,
yeah.
so okay, what are the possibilities? It's either that or the device is listening. highly unlikely because you'll kill your battery if you were to constantly listen, or just happen to fall, or the other third one, actually the other possibility is that it is probing, these devices are probing what's playing currently on these stations and say, oh, it's currently playing this, I'll offer that up as a
Yeah.
song. It's trying to make
So
these correlations, so
I
I'm
was
not
trying
saying
like
they're
hell to find something like
okay.
you're saying, right? So I'm not the brightest bulb, but I'm not an idiot either. So I like went
Okay.
out and I searched. I was like, well, maybe it's I'm trying to remember who The Sound of Silence was by. I can't remember off the top of my head who that's
Garf
by.
Art and
So I was
Garfunkel.
like, maybe it's like an anniversary of, right? Like maybe that's when the song came out or the person died or
Maybe.
whatever. So I searched all that, nothing. I got no hits. I was like, there's got to be some commonality here, and I could not find it. Like I'm still beating myself up trying to figure this one out without
Simon
just
and
going
Garfunkel
conspiracy.
wrote that they wrote that song decades ago, and I doubt they were celebrating something, but whatever.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I was
you know,
grasping for straws. I'm like, is it the anniversary of like the song? Did it come out? Was the album debuting on this week or something? Like, why am I
why don't you just
seeing?
put why don't you Ed, why don't you just get it over with, put some tinfoil on your head and just call it a day, all right?
Maybe that's
Look,
where I'm
these things
headed
are
in my
not
old age.
they're not doing what you're these things don't do what you think they're doing. They're just correlating data. And yeah, sometimes it's like, whoa, how does it know? But it's like, you look behind the scenes, what's happening. Like it's like that Leslie Nielsen, scene where he's like, nothing to see here, folks. Everything's fine. Everything's blowing up behind him. It's not that everything's blowing up, but lots of data is transferring around on this thing called the internet. And it might be that you've just found there's some correlate that some system has decided there's a correlation and it will display it.
Yeah.
So
My tinfoil needle was high that day. Let's just say that though.
okay, fair enough.
That
Fair
that,
enough.
that was an extreme one. When I immediately texted this person I know, and I was like, "Dude, this thing's listening all the time, isn't it? Like the app on my phone that you guys have
It can't.
that works this home
It just
device."
can't it just can't because it would drain the battery too quickly if it did. If these apps did listen all the time, the battery life would just plummet because that's an active
Yeah,
process. And
I mean,
furthermore,
I
you
I
have to
get that, but
synthesize. Yeah, you have to synthesize the audio because we sound like whales to computers, right? I don't know if you realize this, but like we sound like, when you listen to a whale song and it sounds like gibberish and you don't understand, it's just tones. That's what
sorry,
we
I gotta
sound like
laugh
to
'cause you say that
I'm
like we all
serious.
just listen to whale noises. When you're listening to whale sounds,
No, like you saw the movie. Okay, I'll make the geek reference. You saw Star Trek
I'm
4, The
giving you
Search for
shit.
Spock, right? And they had to go and get humpback whales, or Star Trek 1, right? And Star
Yeah,
Trek 1, they
I
featured humpback whales.
I'm
Star Trek
teasing.
4, they featured humpback whales. In both instances, you heard what they sound like. So you wanted me to make the noise. I know that's why you were claiming to not be. You're claiming to be ignorant of the what. That's what they sound like. That's what we sound like to computers.
I wanted to
Believe it or
hear
not.
John's best whale impression is really what
No,
I'm after.
no, we're not doing that. People know what I'm talking about. It's not the porpoise squeak, squeak, squeak. It's
Uh,
the low, because noise travels longer if it's a lower tone. Anyways, more scientific gibberish. Yeah, we sound like this to computers. So computers are just that to
yeah,
have a device actively listening all the time would just kill its battery life, and then it has to further process the stuff. Like it's not easy to process this stuff, right? This
no.
is why it's like this is why the Newton didn't translate text very well sometimes, and handwriting's hard, but it's like now you're doing this in audio. Are you kidding? Like this is hard,
I should have bought a lotto ticket that day.
right? Right.
I
Okay,
just felt like
fair enough.
something was aligning that day. It's like, how else would it know? Like if I was on Spotify and I had just listened to it, and then another device was like, "You want to listen to that
Sure.
song?" I've been like, "Oh
Yeah,
yeah, Spotify and
that's
this other
easy to
app are
understand.
talking. That makes sense."
Yes.
When it was the
Yes.
radio, that caught me off guard. It was like,
It could
"That's
have been something that is, yeah, Art Garfunkel or Paul Simon or something was celebrating something, or it was the anniversary of the song, or who knows. So
yeah." That was an odd one. Anyway, I got us way off topic. I,
it's fine.
I've got stock in aluminum. That's what I'm after.
Okay. Yep. Sounds reasonable. You and all the are you gonna have a cabin in the woods soon, and have your theories and have newspaper clippings pointing to other things and everything? So
Yeah,
just
the chart
go for it. Just go the whole way. Just do it. I've always wanted a friend who's a bit nutty.
got the Charlie Day like billboard
Right.
or cork board behind me.
Yep. Yep. Perfect.
Wall
That'd be
one.
fun for me. Fun just for my own personal enjoyment. I would just be like, all right, what else are they doing, Ed? What are the
Or
lizard people doing?
maybe I have literal stock in aluminum, and I'm just trying to get other people freaked out to drive the
Can you
prices
buy
up.
stock in quote unquote aluminum? I don't even think you can. This is getting
I'm
such a
sure you
weird conversation,
can.
but well, you can buy, you can buy futures and things like that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there are then companies that do that, and you could buy their stock. So
Right, indexes and things. Sorry,
yeah, so
apologies. Yes,
I have a copper index, not an aluminum one. I need to look that up and then start making people crazy.
that hit peak. I think at various. You could probably do a correlation between the price of aluminum and certain events that have transpired that a lot of conspiracy theorists have gotten crazy about. So that'd be kind of fun. I don't
Yeah.
even think that work. Anyways, sorry, this is getting way off topic. I don't know why.
So, John, what's your favorite conspiracy theory?
That's right. Right.
uh,
Uh, Too good.
yes. So what's the next big thing for John Bristow? What are you going to any events? You got anything, blogs coming up? Anything like that?
So I was talking about this the other day with some friends. I use TripIt, which is an app that you can use to basically. This is a setup, by the way. But you asked next conference, etc. So
Mhm.
this is the reason for the tangent. Um, I think I'm up to 770,000 kilometers on TripIt, and in 5 years, which is a lot. It's not as much as some folks I know. Richard Campbell, for example, he's got millions. But I was saying that I was showing that they have this built-in chart that shows you like, year over year, and it's got this graph,
Mhm.
and then COVID hit, and it went like that. It just went
All
down to
fun
zero.
stop.
Right. So I've actually enjoyed not traveling. I've really enjoyed not going to conferences because I was going to conferences constantly, and that was part of my role at Progress when I was there at Telerik,
Mhm.
and being in developer evangelism and developer advocacy. And so I was traveling all the time, going to Bulgaria, going to the US, etc., putting lots of miles on. And in the last 2 years, I've barely traveled, and I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed not being on an airplane. And you know, we're boarding. Are you in group one? Are you in group two? Is your name Ed? Do you have socks that are red? Get on the plane. Sort of thing. So I've really enjoyed not traveling. So as far as
See,
conferences are concerned,
yeah.
I don't have anything, and I've really enjoyed not going to conferences. That being said, I do miss conferences and talking to people, but I have social activities outside of work that help me get that. So,
Fair enough. I
sorry,
I
that's
don't.
a very long petered out answer to your question.
No, no, it's actually spot on. So I don't enjoy the quote traveling. I enjoy the being there.
Yes,
So this was always a lot worse for you because you live on basically an island
yeah.
in the
What's
middle
your
of
point?
the ocean. Uh,
Yes, and
so
what's your
for you to
point?
travel
Middle
anywhere is like, what is the shortest trip outside of Australia? Like,
New Zealand,
which is how many hours?
3 hours flight.
Okay, that's not
Well,
too
it
bad.
depends. Actually, hang on. It depends on where you're coming from. From Perth, it's 7 hours.
Okay,
So
so
Australia's a
yeah.
big country. So depends on where you're leaving and coming, where you're going. So I would say, okay, so on at minimum, it's 12 and a half to the US from here, going to and from. Europe is another matter, which is always fun. I've done that leg many, many times. And there's different routes you can go through. So the nicest route I've had is going through Turkey. So this is travel geek stuff now. If you're going to London, good luck because you're going to go. It's really weird how they do the route sometimes. They'll either go right across and you'll bomb right across, Africa, the Middle East, etc., and bomb right across Europe sometimes. And you'll usually go through Dubai or generally Dubai. One time I went directly north and we just bombed it right across northern Siberia. It was nuts. And I saw some things. I saw some weird things like you would think there was nothing in Siberia, but there was this there were things that I saw going across Siberia that just blew my mind. I didn't know what they were. I think they were like power stations or something. They were all, it was like, imagine landmass, dark as you could see, because it was twilight in the air, when we were in the air, and you're looking across. You're looking at the map on the seat in front of you. You're like, okay, I guess we're right here. In the Risk game, we're like, I'm near Vladivostok or whatever, like some place you've never been, nor would you ever go, etc. And you're like, okay, I'm over this weird town name, etc. And then you look down, there's nothing. And then over in the corner on the landmass, there's this lit up thing. It looks like a square of lights. And you just fly over and you're like, what is that? And there's nothing around. There's no cities, nothing. It's like, is that like an Area 52 type area? Like, what's going on? And I never found out what it was, but I'm sure it's like some power station or something like that. But it's amazing what you would see when you fly over these things. Like, I've been to, when you fly from North America to parts of Europe, typically you'll go over, Iceland and Greenland and stuff, and it's crazy what you see when you're flying over those things. Of course, you don't want to be that guy when you're flying in a long haul flight. When everyone shuts their window shades and it's daylight, and everyone's like, I gotta get my sleep. And then you don't want to be that guy who opens up the window shade a little bit and like all this light pours into the fuselage and everyone starts looking over like, who's that guy at 34F? Like, who's this guy? Like, oh, I'm gonna look at nature now.
Well, you never seen a cloud before, buddy?
I know. It's like, but I was always interested in that stuff. I always liked looking at the landscape we were flying over. So yeah, I would just stare at it and be like, oh, they got those types of mountains, or yeah, there's nothing really around here other than snow, and like being Canadian, that's, pretty common for me. But yeah, the ocean is by far the most boring thing to fly over. That's for sure.
Oh,
it's just
yes.
like waves. Yeah. And just like, okay, that's what we're looking at. Perfect. Yeah.
So I can travel pretty extensively without leaving the States, and there's a lot of conferences in here, to
Yes.
do. But then if I go to Europe, it's not that far of a flight, not anything
No.
you're used to. But there is literally nothing between New York and London. Like, it's just water. There's
Yeah.
nothing to see.
Nope.
You're lucky if you can see anything, really. It's just like,
I
it's
really think
blue
they
down
invented
and
the
it's blue up.
Concorde. They invented the Concorde just because of the boredom of that flight. That was the whole reason they invented that plane, was because this flight is boring. Can we get this down to 3 hours? All right, the Concorde. I'm kidding, of course, but I really hope they bring that back by the supersonic flights. I know there's talk about that coming back, and I really hope that they have that sort of thing come back soon. But that would be awesome. But just on your note about like, you like being there, you hate the traveling. I've always had this opinion that they should just put us into coffins and just put us to sleep like cargo, and like just give us a little bit of anesthesia or whatever, and just put us to sleep, and just make sure our vitals are fine, and then just like luggage, just put us on the conveyor belt and just stack up the airplane, and then just transport us to where we want to go, and then just wake us up on arrival. That would be awesome. I would love something like that. I hate having to travel on airplanes because the movies always suck, the food is always crap, and you're always uncomfortable. And so it's like, why don't you I'll just put me in a little box and just like a shoe, and I'll just like, just fire me, like catapult me, trebuchet me across the ocean and just have done with me. I'm asleep. Why would I care? So
Yeah.
perfect response to my
anesthesiologist being in charge of
I know.
me flying is probably not where I want to be either. But yeah, it'd be nice if you could just blink and wake up somewhere else.
Well, they do that in all the sci-fi movies, right? They do. Why can't they do
right?
that for us? The aliens, how long you've been in quote unquote hypersleep? Just put me in the mini hypersleep. Just put me asleep for 12 hours. Fly me to wherever I need to be, and you wake up, you're refreshed, and you kind of stretch a little bit, and you're like, oh, I didn't see a movie. Well, big deal. You're here, right? So I don't know.
I cannot
Maybe that's the
sleep.
next big thing. Who knows?
I cannot sleep sitting upright, especially on an airplane.
No one can. No one can.
Some people can, man. I've seen it,
but
really. I am not one of those people. Yeah. I always get I don't know if it's something to do with the motion of the plane or the fact that I'm just sitting up, but I have that like startled, I'm falling and getting startled awake thing. And I was actually scared I was gonna like slap the person next to me in the seat. So I just gave up. I was like, I can't sleep on this thing. There's no way. So,
well, it's not a natural act, getting into a metal tube and being rocketed across the sky at 500 miles an hour. It's if you really do think about it, it is quite a quite a crazy experience. And yeah, I mean, whatever. I think with enough exhaustion, you can definitely sleep wherever you want. But yeah, I think planes are not a natural experience if you think about it. You
Yeah.
know,
A few times I've been over to like Bulgaria and that it's like 22 to 24 hours of travel nonstop. And
your numbers make laugh. I've literally been in transit for 34, 38 hours before.
yeah, and you can't sleep. So it's like, yeah, it's a long day. You
Yeah.
start getting a
And then you get to
little
the airport and
crazy.
you're in this weird state of mind where you've had no sleep and everything's hilarious or everything's annoying. And then
Hmm.
that automated message comes in like, please do not leave your baggage unattended. And the places your mind goes when you're jet lagged is hilarious to me. Like I've thought of the weirdest things while jet lagged, or I found some of the things, the funniest things ever. In airport travel, you see the weirdest things ever when you're traveling to and from places in airports. Airports are by far they are they are the island of misfit toys for humanity. Like you see everything there, right? You see
Yeah.
every jerk, every inconsiderate person, every nice, awesome person, every walk of life is at the airport, I find,
Yeah.
and in terms of personality, etc. And when you're jet lagged, it's all hysterical. It's all hilarious, and you're just laughing to yourself. And you look like a lunatic because you look disheveled, and then you're just laughing by yourself. You're like, all right, what's wrong with this guy? Sort of thing. But it's just because your brain goes to certain places. That's all.
I remember eating dinner 4 times in one day. That was an interesting one.
Right.
So,
Why am I
like,
always hungry?
I left the States, and then there was, like, a layover in, um,
Amsterdam,
Germany, which would have been my dinner
Munich.
time.
Yep.
So I ate my quote dinner there, and then I got to
Yes.
Bulgaria, and then it was actually dinner time when I landed. So naturally, I'm hungry. I ate as soon as I got out of the airport, and then friends start showing up. The other people flying in from out of the country are landing, and
More
like
dinner.
yeah,
More. Yes.
every 2 hours, it's like, well,
Yes.
I just landed. I need to get something to eat, and it's like, you want to come? Sure, why not? I
Yes.
could eat again. And then
Yeah.
by the fourth dinner, you're like, yeah, I think I just had dessert. And
Yeah, you feel like those two hobbits in the Lord of the Rings. What about fourth dinner?
yeah, somebody was like, you're not ordering a meal. I'm like, yeah, I've done that three times already today. Just
Yes.
doing dessert. Thank you very much.
Yes, 100%. So for those folks watching, why we're talking about conferences so much, it is a reality of the software industry. You will go to a conference every now and then. You will have to travel, and you will like it, and you will have four dinners.
Four dinners. All right, John. I think that's a good place to wrap this up. Four dinners it is.
Sure.
Where can we find out more about what you're working on, John? Any links to drop
Octopus.com.
here?
Octopus.com is the one URL to rule them all. Make it a homepage, make it a bookmark. I don't care. But check us out, and I'm on the Twitters as well. John Bristow is my handle. I don't tweet there as often as I should, but once in a while, I just post stuff that I find funny or technical. That's about it. Instagram, whatever, just dad photos. If you're into like dad jokes and stuff, that's pretty much me. But octopus.com, that's generally the place to be.
Awesome, John. It was great talking to you, my friend, and
You too.
we will see you again soon on our regular news show. And I'll be shipping these interviews on my SoundCloud for Eat Sleep Code, which should start picking up some steam. I told Layla, I had her on last week, that it was
Yep.
still getting quite a few views or listens, even though we haven't aired an actual interview show in quite some
Oh,
time.
time to change
So
that. Let's go.
yeah, I aired uh, Layla's show last week, and it was already several hundred, if not almost 1,000 views.
Nice.
So it's nice to have folks back and listening again. It's nice to be interviewing people again, and appreciate having you on, John.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody.